Goryeo, also known as Goryeo, was a Korean dynasty established in 918 by King Goryeo. This kingdom later gave name to the modern exonym, Korea. It united the later three kingdoms in 936 and ruled most of the Korean peninsula until it was removed by the founder of the Joseon in 1392. Goryeo expanded Korea's borders to present-day Wonsan in the northeast, the Yalu River, and finally almost the whole of the Korean peninsula. Two of this period's most notable products are Celadon pottery and the Tripitaka Koreana, the Buddhist canon carved onto roughly 80,000 wood blocks, and stored at Hyeonsa. Subjects and officials of Goryeo also created the world's first metal-based movable type in 1234. The oldest surviving movable metal type book, the Jikji, was printed in 1377. In 668, Silla conquered Baekje and Goryeo with an alliance with Tang China, but by the late 9th century it was tottering, its monarchs being unimaginative and pressed by the power of powerful statesmen. Many robbers and outlaws agitated, and in 900 Jai and Hwon revolted from Silla control in the Jeolla region as the state of Later Baekje. The year after, Gungyi revolted from the northern regions as Taebong, a son of a regional lord, Wang Jeon, joined Taebong as a general. Taebong fell when Wang Jeon revolted and killed Gungyi in 918. He was crowned Goryeo of Goryeo in June of the same year. Silla was overpowered by Goryeo and Later Baekje and surrendered to Goryeo in 935. In 936, Later Baekje surrendered and Goryeo subsequently maintained an unbroken dynasty that ruled Korea for 474 years. By the 14th century, Goryeo had lost much of its power due to the Mongols and their Yuan dynasty. Although King Gongmin managed to free his kingdom from the Yuan overlordship, General Yi Seongji revolted and overthrew King Gongyang in 1392, establishing himself as Goryeo of Joseon. Gongyang was killed in 1394. Etymology: the name Goryeo is derived from Goryeo, one of the three kingdoms of Korea. Goryeo changed its name to Goryeo during the reign of King Jangsu in the 5th century. The English name, Korea, derives from Goryeo. History. Background: Silla, which had accomplished an incomplete unification of the three kingdoms of Korea in 668, weakened and lost control over local lords during the end of the 9th century. The country entered a period of civil war and rebellion, led by Gungyi, Hwon, Jang-il, and Jai-in Hwon. Gungyi established the state of Later Goryeo, renamed Taebong and Amajan. Jai-in Hwon established Later Baekje. Together with the now declining Silla, they are known as the Later Three Kingdoms. Founding Wang Jeon, later Goryeo of Goryeo, a descendant of a merchant family of Songdo, joined Taebong as a general but later overthrew Gungyi and established the state of Goryeo in 918. Goryeo adopted a Silla-friendly, Later Baekje hostile stage during the later Three Kingdoms, but in 927, Goryeo was defeated by Later Baekje in present-day Daegan. King Goryeo lost his most able supporters in the battle. For 3 years after, Later Baekje dominated the later Three Kingdoms, but after a defeat at Andong in 930, it lost its power. The later Three Kingdoms era ended when Goryeo annexed Silla in 935 and defeated Later Baekje in 936. King Goryeo moved the capital to his hometown of Kaesong, and ruled the Korean peninsula as the first king of Goryeo. Goryeo married a daughter of the Silla royal family and allowed most of their nobility to keep their lands. Even though he ruled the United Nation for only 7 years before his son took the throne upon his death, the succession was not challenged. Political structure: the terminology used in the court of Goryeo was that of an empire, not of a kingdom. The capital, Gaegyeong, was called Hwangdo, imperial capital, and the palace was referred to as imperial palace. The nation also utilized a system of multiple capitals. Gaegyeong as the main capital, and Soyeong, modern Pyongyang, Namgyeong, modern Seoul, and Dongyeong, modern Gyeongju, as secondary capitals. The mere use of this system and the nomenclature or use of the character implied that Goryeo functioned internally as an empire. Other terms, such as Your Imperial Majesty, Empress, Imperial Crown Prince, Empress Dowager, and Imperial Ordinance, also suggest that Goryeo adopted the title system of an empire. However, Goryeo, when enshrining its rulers, did not use the title Emperor. Instead, the title of Great King was used to posthumously enshrine Goryeo monarchs. When enshrining its rulers, however, it did use temple names such as Taoreo. This is a practice kingdoms did not take part in. Imperial titles, like Emperor or East Sea Emperor, were also used. The Song and Liao dynasties of China tolerated Goryeo's imperial claims and practices. In contrast, after the Mongol invasions, all of these terms were prohibited by Mongol rulers, and Goryeo monarchs were forced to insert the character loyal into their posthumous enshrinement names. This is why the monarchs after Wonjong had this character in their posthumous names until Gongmin. As Mongol power diminished, rulers no longer used but still were unable to restore the use of the temple name. In order to strengthen the power of the central government, Gwangjong, the fourth emperor, made a series of laws, including that of freeing slaves in 958 and one creating the exam for hiring civil officials. To assert power internationally, Gwangjong also proclaimed Goryeo an empire independent from any other country of its day. The fifth king, Gyeongjong, launched land ownership reformation called the Junsigwa, and the sixth king, Seongjong, appointed officials to local areas, which were previously succeeded by the lords. Between 993 and 1019, the Goryeo-Khitan War ravaged the northern border. By the time of 11th King Munjong, the central government of Goryeo has gained complete authority and power over local lords. Munjong and later kings emphasized the importance of civilian control of the military. Khitan invasions and Jurchen expedition. Goryeo fought against the Jurchens in the Korean-Jurchen border conflicts. According to Goryeoza, barbarians occupied the land around Pyongyang in 918, and that in 993 the area between Pyongyang and Liaoyang was populated by Jurchens. Goryeo had been beaten into submission to the Jurchens by the Jurchen leader Wu Yashu, who secured the Jurchen-Korean border. The Jurchens extorted gifts and rewards from Goryeo by militarily threatening them. In 993, the Khitan Liao dynasty invaded Goryeo's northwest border with an estimated 800,000 troops. However, the Goryeo commander, Seo Hui, negotiated with them and reached a settlement. In the settlement, Goryeo agreed to end its alliance with the Southern Song, to adopt Liao's calendar, and to become a Liao tributary state. Goryeo obtained Liao consent to incorporate the land between the border of Liao and that of Goryeo, which was occupied by Jurchen tribes troublesome to Liao as far as the Yalu River. With this settlement the Liao withdrew, but Goryeo continued to communicate with the Southern Song, having strengthened its defenses by building a fortress in the newly gained northern territories. In 1009, General Gang Zhou of Goryeo led a coup against King Mokjung, killing him and establishing military rule. The Liao attacked with 400,000 troops in 1010, claiming to avenge the murdered Mokjung. Gang Zhou blocked the Liao's first attack, but he was defeated in the second one and was executed. King Ianjong of Goryeo was forced to flee the capital, which was occupied and burnt by the Khitan, to Naju temporarily. Unable to establish a foothold and fearing a counterattack, the Khitan forces withdrew, after Goryeo admitted the Khitan's suzerainty over it. In 1018, the Liao army invaded for the third time with 100,000 troops. In Henghajin stream, General Gang Gamchan ordered the stream to be blocked until the Khitans began to cross it. and when the kittens were midway across, he ordered that the dam be destroyed so that the water would drown much of the Khitan army. The damage was great and General Gang led a massive attack that annihilated many of the Khitan army. Barely a few thousand Liao troops survived after the Battle of Kuju. In the late summer of 1019, the Liao assembled another large army. Both sides recognizing the difficulty of achieving a decisive victory, King Yi and Zhong sent a tributary mission to the Liao in 1020 and Emperor Shengzong of Liao forgave him. After that, the tributary relationship between Goryeo and Liao was resumed and Goryeo suspended its relationship with the southern Song. Goryeo and Liao had no more conflicts until near the end of the Liao. Meanwhile, the Jurchen north of Goryeo had rendered tribute to the Goryeo monarchs. However, the Wanyan tribe of the Hai Shui Mohe unified the Jurchen and they began to violate the Goryeo border and eventually invaded. In 1087, the first version of the Tripitaka Koreana was completed after many years of labor. In 1107, General Yun Guan led a newly formed army, a force of approximately 17,000 men called the Biolmuban, and attacked the Jurchen. Though the war lasted for several years, the Jurchen were ultimately defeated, and surrendered to Yun Guan. To mark the victory, General Yun built 9 fortresses to the northeast of the border. In 1108, however, General Yun was given orders to withdraw his troops by the new ruler, King Yezhong. Due to manipulation and court intrigue from opposing factions, he was discharged from his post. Opposition factions fought to ensure the new fortresses were turned over to the Jurchen. To defend against the Jurchens and Khitans, a long wall was built by Goryeo in 1033 to 1034. Power struggles. The House Yi of Inju married women to the kings from the time of Munzhong to the 17th king, Inzhong. Eventually the House of Yi gained more power than the monarch himself. This led to the coup of Yi Yajiyam in 1126. It failed, but the power of the monarch was weakened. Goryeo underwent a civil war among the nobility. In 1135, Maya Qiong argued in favor of moving the capital to Soyang. This proposal divided the nobles. One faction, led by Maya Qiong, believed in moving the capital to Pyongyang and expanding into Manchuria. The other one, led by Kim Bu-sik, wanted to keep the status quo. Maya Qiong failed to persuade the king. He rebelled and established the state of Debang, but it failed and he was killed. Military regime. Although Goryeo was founded by the military, its authority was in decline. In 1014, a coup occurred but the effects of the rebellion didn't last long, only making generals discontent with the current supremacy of the civilian officers. In addition, under the reign of King Weizhong, the military officers were prohibited from entering the Security Council, and even at times of state emergency, they were not allowed to assume commands. After political chaos, Weizhong started to enjoy traveling to local temples and studying sutra, while he was almost always accompanied by a large group of civilian officers. The military officers were largely ignored and were even mobilized to construct temples and ponds. In 1170, a group of army officers led by Zheng Yongbu, Yui Bang and Yi Go launched a coup d'état and succeeded. King Weizhong went into exile and King Myeongjong was placed on the throne. Effective power, however, lay with the succession of generals who used an elite guard unit known as the Tabang to control the throne. Military rule of Goryeo had begun. In 1179, the young general Jeong Dae-sung rose to power and began an attempt to restore the full power of the monarch and purge the corruption of the state. However, he died in 1183 and was succeeded by Yui Min, who came from a noble background. His unrestrained corruption and cruelty led to a coup by General Cho Chung-heon, who assassinated Yui Min and took supreme power in 1197. For the next 61 years, the Cho house ruled as military dictators, maintaining the kings as puppet monarchs. Cho Chung-heon was succeeded in turn by his son Cho Yu, his grandson Cho Hang and his great-grandson Cho Ui. When he took control, Cho Chang enforced Myeongjong off the throne and replaced him with King Sinjong. What was different from former military leaders was the active involvement of scholars in Cho's control, notably Prime Minister Yi Yibo, who was a Confucian scholar official. After Sinjong died, Cho forced his son to the throne as Huizhong. After 7 years, Huizhong led a revolt but failed. Then, Cho found the pliable King Godong instead. Although the House of Cho established strong private individuals loyal to it, continuous invasion by the Khitan and Mongols ravaged the whole land, resulting in a weakened defense ability, and also the power of the military regime waned. Mongol invasions and Yuan domination. Fleeing from the Mongols. In 1216 a Khitan army invaded Korea and defeated the Korean Goryeo armies multiple times, penetrating far into the south of Korea during their assaults and reaching up to Goryeo's capital, and were only defeated when the Mongols came over to hunt them down. In 1231, Mongols under Ogedei Khan invaded Goryeo following the aftermath of joint Goryeo-Mongol forces against the Khitans in 1219. The royal court moved to Gangwado in the Bay of Gyeonggi in 1232. The military ruler of the time, Goryeo, insisted on fighting back. Goryeo resisted for about 30 years but finally sued for peace in 1259. Meanwhile, the Mongols began a campaign from 1231 to 1259 that ravaged parts of Gyeongsang and Jeolla. There were 6 major campaigns: 1231, 1232, 1235, 1238, 1247, 1253. Between 1253 and 1258, the Mongols under Mongke Khan's general Jaletai Korcha launched 4 devastating invasions in the final successful campaign against Korea, at tremendous cost to civilian lives throughout the Korean peninsula. Civilian resistance was strong, and the imperial court at Gangwon attempted to strengthen its fortress. Korea won several victories, but the Korean military could not withstand the waves of invasions. The repeated Mongol invasions caused havoc, loss of human lives and famine in Korea. In 1236, Gojong ordered the recreation of the Tripitaka Koreana, which was destroyed during the 1232 invasion. This collection of Buddhist scriptures took 15 years to carve on some 81,000 wooden blocks, and is preserved to this day. In March 1258, the dictator Choui was assassinated by Kim Jun. Thus, dictatorship by his military group was ended, and the scholars who had insisted on peace with Mongolia gained power. Eventually, the scholars sent an envoy to the Mongols, and a peace treaty was contracted between the Mongol Empire and Goryeo. Some military officials who refused to surrender formed the Sambyolcha rebellion and resisted in the islands off the southern shore of the Korean peninsula. After 1270, Goryeo became a semi-autonomous client state of the Yuan dynasty. The Mongols and the Kingdom of Goryeo tied with marriages, and Goryeo became coup de vassal of the Yuan dynasty for about 80 years, and monarchs of Goryeo were mainly imperial sons-in-law. The kings of Goryeo held an important status like other important families of Mardin, Bulgars and Mongols. It is claimed that one of Goryeo monarchs was the most beloved grandson of Kublai Khan. The Goryeo dynasty survived under the Yuan until King Gongmin began to push the Mongolian garrisons of the Yuan back in the 1350s. By 1356, Goryeo regained its lost northern territories. Last reform: when King Gongmin ascended to the throne, Goryeo was under the influence of the Mongol Yuan China. He was forced to spend many years at the Yuan court, being sent there in 1341 as a virtual prisoner before becoming king. He married the Mongol princess Queen Noguk. But in the mid-14th century the Yuan was beginning to crumble, soon to be replaced by the Ming dynasty in 1368. King Gongmin began efforts to reform the Goryeo government and remove Mongolian influences. His first act was to remove all pro-Mongol aristocrats and military officers from their positions. Mongols had annexed the northern provinces of Goryeo after the invasions and incorporated them into their empire as the Sangseong and Dongyeong prefectures. The Goryeo army retook these provinces partly thanks to defection from Yi Jiachun, a minor Korean official in service of Mongols in Sangseong, and his son Yi Seongja. In addition, generals Yi Seongja and Ji Yongsu led a campaign into Liaoyang. After the death of Gongmun's wife Noguk in 1365, he fell into depression. In the end, he became indifferent to politics and entrusted that great task to the Buddhist monk Shindon. But after 6 years, Shindon lost his position. In 1374, Gongmin was killed by Chomansarang and others. Fall in 1388, King Yu and General Cho Yun planned a campaign to invade present-day Liaoning of China. King Yu put the general Yi Seongja in charge, but he stopped at the border and rebelled. Goryeo fell to General Yi Seongja, a son of a Yi Jiachun, who put to death the last 3 Goryeo kings, usurped the throne and established in 1392 the Joseon dynasty. Foreign relations. During the 10th century, the Khitans tried to establish relations with Goryeo at least on 2 occasions. In 942, the Khitan ruler Taizu sent an embassy with a gift of 50 camels to Goryeo, but Goryeo refused them, banishing the envoys and starving the camels to death. Goryeo had maintained relations with most of the 5 dynasties and southern kingdoms in China. By 962, formal relations were established with the Song dynasty. Relations with Song were close, with many embassies being exchanged between Goryeo and Song. But relations would be interrupted by the rise of the Liao and Jian dynasties. After about 30 years of peace, the Khitans invaded Goryeo. After several military campaigns, a state of peace was established in 1020. For around 100 years, the Far East was relatively peaceful and Munjong strengthened the Liao-Song-Goryeo line. In 1102, the Jurchen threatened and another crisis emerged. In 1115 the Jurchen founded the Jin dynasty, and in 1125 Jin annihilated Liao, which was Goryeo's suzerain, and started invasion of Song. In response to the circumstantial changes, Goryeo declared itself to be a vassal state of Jin in 1126. After that, peace was maintained and Jin never actually did invade Goryeo. Tension continued through the 12th century and into the 13th century, when the Mongol invasion started. After a series of battles, Goryeo capitulated to the Mongols, with the direct dynastic rule of Goryeo monarchy. Economy. Commerce in the Goryeo dynasty. Trade was frequent. In the start of the dynasty, Byokrenda was the main port. Byokrenda was a port close to the Goryeo capital. Trade included